Right, so good morning. It's still good morning for all of us that are here. We've not got anybody that's in the afternoon time zone yet. Welcome to what is a hot June in Scotland and throughout Europe, and our last cafe before the summer break. For those of you that haven't seen me before, I am Jenny Millen, the founder of SRITC. And yes, I'm usually about cake. There's a lovely picture there of cake today. And I'm just going to ask who has cake or biscuits with them, because it is a cafe. And I have to say I've let the side down. I've only got biscuits today. Although I have put an order in with one of my favourite cafes for 3 cakes. So I might have one looking like SRITC there, because I think I'm now going to be having graduation next week. So I thought, Martin, you like this? I'm going to put doctor on one of them. So I have a cake with doctor written on. So anybody else got cake or coffee or anything healthy with them? James has got a strawberry. Oh, how does that taste? Does it come from a farm shop, James?
It's come from Tesco, and quite frankly, the fact that it tastes cold is just heaven in itself.
Sarah Murray, do you have anything with you this morning?
No, I haven't even managed to get my glass of water filled up. It's empty. So
Please tell me you've had some breakfast, though.
I had a banana.
That counts. That's good. Great.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are new to the cafes, just a quick whistle stop. We're going to be muted just now, but your chat box is your friend. As everybody that comes to cafes will tell you, it's a real place of sharing knowledge and having a bit of banter. And we all do think positively, which is why I always refer to cake. If you could just, as usual, put your first bit of your postcode in, because that just helps us plot where everybody comes from. And as I say, share ideas and share locations and share examples. That's what it's all about. So this is my usual slide that I share of who's who. And we have directors. Alex is here today, and myself. We also have Saascha, who's one of our speakers today, who is an advisory board member. And we have some other advisory board members in the wings as well. And James, who I just picked on for the strawberry, is a musketeer stroke volunteer. So we have a wee team behind us that helps support us. And what we're trying to achieve. It's a really interesting one, because the last week or two, I've been very involved with politicians in Scotland and the UK. And it's, how do you describe SRITC to a politician? And it's exactly the same lens. It's a case of trying to say that we share a collective voice for rural and island communities. And that I don't like the word network, but we are a community that can share best practices, help people with problems, and try and make change happen, which is what's been happening, which is the great peace. So what lies at the core of SRITC? And normally I pick on somebody, and I'm going to pick on somebody today, and she doesn't know I'm going to do this, so she gives you a 50-50 chance of who that person's now going to be. Nicola in Hoy. What does, I know she sighs and goes, oh no, not me, please. Why today, Jenny? What does SRITC, you have to unmute yourself. What does SRITC mean to you? And you come along to a lot of the cafes. Why?
Well, for me, it's a fantastic place to be in touch with like-minded people that are dealing with very similar issues, and an amazing sort of place that's brought together all sorts of information, all sorts of help, and has some really interesting guest speakers that I sometimes I'm a bit like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to find this, and every time I'm really impressed and enjoy them. So that just keeps me coming back.
She's getting an addiction. There are worse addictions to have, aren't there? And I know some of you are joining us today that were at our EV cafe, which was a special edition. So welcome to you as well to our Friday sessions. So as Nicola says, it's about being supportive, it's about being resourceful. And I think the big bit for me is a community. I keep coming back to that, because when we're in, and I said this last week at the mental health stand, Change Mental Health, that actually the isolation and the mental health implications of being isolated and not having people to talk to or people to support you is really key. And we were just really fortunate that we were coming online before a pandemic happened, and then a pandemic happened and everything exploded. So for me, I think the key bit is community. But feel free to put in the chat what SRITC means to you and what the key bits are for you and why you keep coming back on a Friday. And one of my pleas will be, you might have seen it in the news bulletin, we've created a buymeacoffee.com page. As a social enterprise, we do have to raise funding, and I don't tend to talk about it, but we do need funding to continue. So if you feel like you're able to donate something to us for the price of a coffee or a piece of cake, we really would appreciate it, just so we can keep the core things running within SRITC, because we don't get funding from the likes of Scottish Government, etc. We have to be entrepreneurial and innovative to find different ways of bringing in some funding to keep us going. So what's been happening? Well, first up, we had that EV special cafe a couple of weeks ago, and it was really great to get the feedback. And many people said it was inspiring, it was practical. If you haven't watched it or listened to it, I'd thoroughly recommend it. It's a different format to what we're doing today, and you'll hear from communities and groups and suppliers and organisations on the challenges that we've got. So we have now formed a focus action group to support this cafe, which we've done off our own back, and that is going to be taking place in September. So if you weren't at the EV cafe, but you want to be part of that conversation, because there's a few things bubbling away in the inbox at the moment on this, which I'll be able to share with you, some next week and some at the beginning of the summer. But it was very well received, and it was lovely to hear the feedback of it was inspirational. So what else has been happening? As I mentioned, we were at the Highland Show last week. We were in the Scottish Government tent or marquee, along with a number of other organisations. So we were there Thursday, Friday, when the politicians were there. So I managed to meet a few MSPs, new ones, and new roles. So for those of you that aren't aware in Scotland, we now have a brand new transport committee, and that is being convened by Willie Rennie. And there's 5 other MSPs on that. So they are starting to have their meetings, and I put it into the news bulletin, what you can see from the last meeting recently. We'll keep feeding into the Transport Committee with outputs. If you've got anything you want us to share, then please let us know and we will do that. But we had a great time. It was very mixed weather. And for those of you that are not sure what the Royal Highland Show is, have a Google. I'm not sure you have an equivalent in Germany, Saascha and Martin, but you can tell us if you do. Then on the Saturday, when the politicians and Scottish Government aren't actually there, a number of organisations, including SRITC, take over the marquee, and it becomes like the vibe of a village hall. So there was everything from glitter face painting through to speaking to agricultural or university colleges, SRUC, about work that they've been doing. There was conversation about nature. There was young people there. I think in total there was 3,600 people through the marquee on the Saturday and Sunday. So the aim is that we'll be back there next year, and I'm pleased to say we had Greg from Bus Users UK, who some of you will recognise from other cafes, and he attended as well, and we are pitching and thinking and plotting for what we're going to do next year. So if you want to be involved, then please just let us know. So as you tell, it's been rather busy. And in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Alex, because we're tying up the water transport project now. So you will see landing in your inbox very shortly the final report, which he will touch on. And then, if that wasn't enough, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we are trying to find some funding, and we are bidding into some tenders. It's a long process, and not necessarily going to be successful, because we are a different operational model to a consultancy company or a local authority or a charity. So it's quite difficult to do this, but we are, and the team is spending some time trying to make sure that that's happening. So finally on that, the big news, the drum roll is, this is our last Friday cafe. I'm waiting for somebody to say something. After 56 Friday cafes, we are not going to be doing Friday cafes anymore. And you might be having a bit of a sinking feeling going, oh gosh, what's happening? The good news is we're changing the day, okay? We're changing the day to a Thursday. And the reason we're doing this is so many people email me saying, I do not work a Friday anymore and I can't get to the cafe. Is it going to be available as a recording? And to be brutal, I'm getting fed up with that. So to make life a bit easier, we're going to change it to a Thursday from September. If Thursdays don't work, we did run the EV cafe on a Monday. We may swap it to a Monday. So please do use the chat box this now to say whether Thursdays are a good thing or not. We have organised September onwards till Christmas to Thursday. So I'm just going to have to get in my head after 56 times of doing this cafe that it's not a Friday afternoon, Friday morning. So if I'm going to struggle to do that, you guys might as well. So just keep an eye, and Alex will share in the chat the future cafes. So when you see it going into your inbox and it saves in your diary, don't think it's a mishap. It is a Thursday. For me, the other thing that's about to happen is I'm finally graduating next week with my PhD for doctorate, as Martin mentioned earlier on. A number of people have been in touch asking if they can watch it online. So what we've done is we've put it together as an event, so you can sign up and get the link. For those of you that wish to attend, it'd be lovely, because it's a hall where I can only take 2 people into. So it'd be nice to know there's some people watching online. So that's on Thursday night UK time at 6 p.m. So Thursday, the 2nd of July. And from what I've been told, I will be fairly early on up. So you probably only need to watch and listen for 15 minutes at tops. So I'm now going to hand over to Alex. Where are you, Alex? Because I can't see you on the screen for a brief.
I think I'm here.
Yep,
I'm here.
Go for it. Give an update.
Right, I'll just keep this fairly concise for everyone, because Saascha is the main star of the show today. So a quick recap on the water transport project. We secured funding about 12 months ago from the Foundation for Integrated Transport. They're a charity that funds integrated transport projects. So the funding we got allowed us to do a deep dive into UK water transport, which essentially means ferries, either ferries serving coastal communities or ferries operating on rivers and peninsulas. The objective was to look at similarities and differences in terms of how different ferry networks and ferry routes are funded, and how policy is designed, and importantly, what the passenger experience feels like as well. That including looking at those with disabilities, and also looking at how well integrated ferries are with other modes of public transport, particularly buses and trains. And so the final report that we will share with you shortly goes into quite a degree of detail, looking across the UK at different ferry networks, and also looking at things like social value and community benefits created through those programs as well, because for anyone who's a regular attendee at these cafes, we all know that community benefit, social value is really important as well. I think the one key takeaway that we're putting forward from this report, and this is something that, even though the report is now just about finished, we want to keep this work going. We will try and get more funding to allow us to do more research, but the stakeholders we brought together through the project, we're hoping to keep together through a focus action group, so that we can continue to move forward with some of the recommendations that we identified through the research we did. But I think the one big takeaway from all the research is that ferries, while they might seem a little bit peripheral in many people's day-to-day lives, because not everyone uses them, and certainly not as many people use them compared to buses and trains, they are critical to many people's lives. I think we know that anyone who comes to our cafes, anyone who either lives in an island or travels to an island, recognises that ferries are genuinely lifeline services. And so they need to be brought in a much better way into the wider transport planning frameworks. And so that when we look at pathways, things like decarbonisation, that ferries are fully reflected in that wider holistic planning as well. So we welcome your thoughts if you are interested in this area. I know that not everyone is, but we'll share the report with you. Absolutely value your feedback from it, because like I said, we don't want this just to be a report that gathers dust. We want this to be something that is a foundation for further work, further conversations, and particularly, as Jenny alluded to earlier on, we are getting more engaged with politicians in Scotland and also down in Westminster as well. And we want to make sure that ferries are not forgotten about, that they are part of this wider conversation around rural transport and around islands transport. So I think that's the top line overview for everyone. If anyone in the meeting today or in the cafe today has been part of the journey over the last 12 months, thank you for your contributions. very, very much appreciated. And I will share a link shortly to the report. I will get it out in email as well to you. And take the summer to have a look through it. You know, we're going to allow people time because we're into summer holidays to have a look through the reports, and we'll reconvene and look at the feedback we get later in August, and that will help to hopefully shape and drive what our next steps are. So that's over you, and back to you, Jenny.
I feel like where am I? I'm on the wrong one. I feel like a news bulletin lady where people say, by the way, we're now back to Glasgow or Edinburgh or wherever it's going to be. So yeah, I'm going to introduce Saascha. Saascha has been on the advisory group, and some of you actually might have met him because Saascha found us through the joys of Google in 2022 or 2020. 2022, I think it was, Saascha, wasn't it? When we had the SRITC gathering, and unbeknown to him, there was a fellow German, Martin, who's on the call today, who was also at the in-person gathering. So Saascha is one of the advisory boards group. But what he doesn't know is I actually Googled him last night because I haven't Googled Saascha before. And I need Saascha to tell me about, and I haven't shared it, there's a fairly embarrassing photograph of him lying on some grass because he was heavily involved in football. And saying everybody's dominated by football at the moment, and maybe Scotland might want to cry at the moment because our chances are only 5% for progressing through. But anyway, Saascha, would you like to tell us what you did with a football hat on before you start talking to us about transport in Germany?
Yeah, happy to do that. I don't think it's an embarrassing picture. I actually quite like it. I have founded a football organization that wanted to compete with FIFA and have organized European Football Cups and World Cups, including one in London, by the way, for countries that are not quite countries, so like the Isle of Man, but also the Punjabi community, so all kind of different nations that are not nations in the sense of FIFA. And I've done that for 7 years.
See, you learn something new every day when you Google. And I say it's embarrassing because it looks like your hair is a completely different color in that photograph.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, I will hand over to you, and I thank you very much for what you're about to share with us. I have said to Saascha that if there's any jargon or terminology he uses that you're not familiar with, please just say. Okay, because we do use different language. I don't mean English versus Germany. I mean transport language. So Saascha, thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. I hope you can see that now. And I don't think I will use so much complicated language, to be honest. Yeah, my name is Saascha Dueerkop. I'm from the Fraunhofer Institute, FKIE. I will not translate the whole thing. It's basically the largest private research institution in Europe. And my team and I personally am responsible for rural transportation and logistics. I'm more on the logistics side personally, but Jenny asked me to introduce the €9 ticket to us, which was a bit of a national experiment in Germany a few years ago and has its impact until today. So I will do that. And if I say anything wrong, I can welcome Martin to intervene because he's probably much more of an expert on that as I am. Because let me try to, I want to start with maybe giving you a bit of a context of what kind of issues we actually had with public transport, and that's mostly from the user perspective. And I would say one issue, which is not an issue, it's a design, is that we do have 60 different public transport companies. They are running the trams, the undergrounds, the buses, everything. And there is no general logic behind them. So of course they all grew over time and are historical entities, if you want. And yeah, we still have these more than 60 little fiefdoms. In some cases, like in Berlin and surrounding Brandenburg, it's one for a very big region. Sometimes we have smaller ones. Some of them are working in some kind of alliances, others are not. Some of them are having shared tariffs, others have not. So I would say from a user perspective, the main thing is it's a little bit chaotic. Or used to be a little bit chaotic. And just to give you an example from actually my daily life, I'm living close to Cologne, which is on the right here. I live in an area where everyone is commuting to Cologne for work, except for me. So what I would usually do, I take a bus to the next train station and then take a train which takes 20 minutes to central Cologne. And I have 2 different buses going to 2 different train stations as an option here. And the issue with that is that they are run by different organizations. So the train obviously is run by the, well, the train already depends. There are local trains which are run by the local transport organization, which you can see on the left. And there are mid-distance trains, I would say, which are run by the National Railway, which are on the right. So if I want to take a bus and then a train, I need to know which train I'm using, because I might need to have I might need to buy 2 different tickets for them on 2 different apps. And that's a bit of an issue with practicability. And you can see the price here. If you sum that up, it would cost me for the bus and then the train a total of €9, which is a funny coincidence. These prices are from yesterday, but by coincidence, they are exactly €9 as the €9 ticket I will speak about. And even worse, when I arrive in Cologne, I will possibly take a tram or underground in Cologne and need to take another ticket. And I just wanted to highlight that very briefly as well. Every city in Germany, of course, has their own transport organization again for public transport, and they have their own tariff system. So you will probably have no chance to understand what you need to buy if you see the sketch on the right. And I never understood it as well, although I've lived in Cologne for 2 years. There are price levels from short to 1A and B, 2A and B, and then up to 7. And there is a guideline on it next to the ticket box, which is saying something like, if you take a mid-length trip, you will probably need 3. So it's a bit chaotic for everyone not living in Cologne all his life. And it would be the 3rd ticket I need from the 3rd system in this case. And I wanted to give you that context because I think it's crucial to understand what the €9 ticket did in Germany. Because Russia, in a way, killed the fiefdoms. It didn't. They still exist. Martin is working for one of them, if I recall correctly. But all these transport organizations were kind of forced to work together more closely and have a shared ticket. So the Ukraine war started or the full invasion started in February 2022. So the energy prices rose, as you can see on that sketch, especially for petrol and for oil for heating. And as a result, kind of a by-result, not an intended result, of course, our government got a lot of taxes because they tax all these energy products. So if they get more expensive, of course, they also make more profits in taxes or tax incomes. So the government sat together and they wanted to use these sudden high tax incomes to invest it, first of all, to reduce the burdens of the citizens, obviously, but secondary also to maybe tackle some of the goals that the government coalition had. And what they did in the terms of transportation is, first of all, they gave a discount on fuel for all cars. I think it was 20 cents per liter that the government paid for you. And secondary is the €9 ticket, which was also meant to tackle our emissions. And the €9 ticket in that way was really a public transport revolution, because as you can see, it came in a lot of forms and formats, because all of these transport organizations all across Germany had to sell it. So they all had their own form of it, but it all was the same ticket. And it cost €9 a month and was valid across Germany for everything apart from high-speed trains. So you could drive every subway, every bus, every other train across the country from June to August for €9 a month. And of course, for a user, that first of all meant it was very easy, because you could just use one app or one ticket for all public transport. You didn't need to have all these different formats or understand tariffs. And it was super cheap. As you have seen, it was the equivalent to a one-way trip for me to my next bigger city. But another comparison would be the price in Hamburg, for example, which previously was €112.18 80 just to get around Hamburg a month. So now you could go all across Germany for €9. And when I speak about the impacts, I wanted to start with two funny anecdotes that dominated the headlines over that summer. And the first one, maybe Martin remembers that as well, was something which was called Sylt entern. Sylt is an island in Germany and is kind of the German Monaco, where all the rich people are usually doing their vacations. And a bunch of punks from across Germany now figured out that they could go there for €9 because the ticket also covered the train to the island. So first they hang out there on the main square of town, bathing in the fountain all day, creating a lot of very interesting pictures for the media. Then they organized a punk festival and finally demonstrated on the island a few times. And the second topic over that summer in the media was tourism. Touristic places in Germany got overcrowded quite quickly. So in a way, it was a boost for local tourism as well, because people now spend their weekends, especially on the beaches or in some mountainous areas, wherever, depending on where you live. It was sometimes tiresome to get there because, of course, you can't take the high-speed train, which would take me to the coast in probably 3.5 hours. But you would need to change trains 6 times and take slower ones. But at least you could get there for €9 in, I don't know, 6-7 hours. So a lot of people did that from across Germany. And if we look at the, I would say, more academic results, that's basically what we see as well. So 52 million of these tickets were sold over the 3 months, which is quite significant. And train traffic increased quite significant as well, as you can see on this chart for the 3 months. Bus traffic was not measured. I wrote here separately, but actually it was not measured at all, how it changed. At least I couldn't find any study about that. But I think it's safe to assume that bus tickets went up as well, let alone because people are going by bus to the train stations. We also had slightly less road traffic, as that study is saying, but as you can see on the graph, that impact really was minimal. It did decrease a little bit, and another study is saying that up to 10% of the people who used the ticket to ride the train or the bus replaced a car drive by that. But that is a bit dubious, and we are not quite sure about that, to be honest. So it didn't have a big impact on reducing emissions, if we are being honest. But it did, and that's on a negative side, it did overwhelm our train system, of course, which is already not very great. We have one of the least punctual train services in Western Europe right now, if I'm informed correctly. And that did get much worse over these 3 months for obvious reasons, mostly because it was overcrowded. And what all the studies on that ticket found out is that they were mostly used for recreational use. So you basically had 2 kinds of users: those who already had a ticket for much more money that used it to commute. They, of course, now got the cheaper ticket instead, and just saved money. And the additional users were mostly using it for recreational use on weekends and in the afternoon, less so for commuting. So the percentage of people that changed their commuting behaviors were not zero, but not very significant either. But the long-term effects have been studied as well now, because that was a couple of years ago now. So
I'm just wondering, is it me or Saascha? Can somebody tell me?
Saascha has
We got
left.
lost acoustically, yes.
Martin, would you be able to continue?
what we do know now is that it made PNV Bird more popular. 12% that they use public. Hello?
Saascha, can you hear us? We lost you for a bit.
Did
there.
you lose me?
We lost you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear well. Can you hear me as well?
Yes, I can.
Okay, where did you lose me?
I think if you go back like the last minute or so, there have been two occasions where your voice was missing for like a 10 seconds each time. So we may have lost a few sentences.
All right. Yeah, I will just sum up the last point here again. So what we saw is that especially the new users used it mostly for recreational use. So we had people that commuted already and now got a cheaper ticket, which is, of course, a great benefit for them. And most of the new users used it for recreational use on weekends and afternoon, where we saw usage peaks. Now I will continue here. The long-term effects, most of all, it made ÖPNV, which is the public transport in Germany, more popular. 12% of Germans say that they use public transport more frequently now since the €9 ticket. And a lot of the new users kept using it. So 30% of new users that didn't really use public transport before kept using it between September and November, where the study took place. And 25% of those who never used it before now use it at least once a month. So that seems to have worked quite well. And a third of the people said that they were particularly happy with the experience of using public transport, and that's why they kept using it. So it was a marketing boost for public transport, you could say. And then there was a political aftermath of that, because of course it was kind of a test, and it was always meant as a temporary measurement, but in a way it was too good to avoid for future governments. The popular demand just grew over time. More and more people wanted it back or wanted to keep it. So there were petitions, media campaigns, opposition speeches about that all the time to bring it back, and these demands just grew. There were pricing debates on the other hand as well, because it was quite clear that €9 probably not something you could sustain for the government, because it costs a lot of money, which we just had because of the higher oil prices. So still the same government, by the way, remained reluctant to reintroduce it for that reason. So there was almost a year of debates on a possible pricing, and also how to manage that pricing, because of course usually all these 60 transport companies want to make their money by selling their tickets and not one nationwide thing. And then we had a comeback in 2023. The Deutschland ticket, so the Germany ticket, was then implemented as a successor. So I will briefly speak about that as well. It's still easy and it has all the benefits of the €9 ticket, but it's not as cheap. It initially cost €49, then 58, and now I think it's costing €63 a month. But it still has the same function. You can use any train, bus, tram across the country at any times without needing any further tickets. It is still kind of temporary. At least it's only guaranteed until 2030. I don't think we can move back after that, realistically, but currently we only have it guaranteed until then. And it's organizationally a bit more stable, because now, of course, it's not just a test run, but there were debates between all the different transport companies and the federal government and the state governments, and they kind of found a more sustainable solution how to run that scheme. The federal governments and the state finance it together now, and they reimburse all the transport companies for their losses, basically. But also the fiefdoms are coming back in a way. So of course not all the transport companies are agreeing on all of that. Some of the states are disagreeing to some of that, or they just want to go the extra mile and be even better than the Germany-wide €63 ticket. So as you can see, we have a lot of like regional initiatives where you have some upgrades to it, discounts, benefit for some. In some regions, it's cheaper for students. In my state, it's cheaper for everyone. It's just €39 for everyone. Some of them had upgrades to first class available for that, and so on and so forth. So we do have different schemes again for different regions, including a few bus-specific ones. And that's it. So thank you very much.